as well as the Director of Audits and his team for their cooperation and support. Thank you, President.
Questions. Question 1, Dr. Wendy Hong. Thank you, Mr. President. There are views pointing out that due to the interchangeability of the Green Form Subsidized Home Ownership Scheme, or GSH, and public rental housing, PRH, the external design and construction materials of GSH flats are exactly the same as those of PRH flats, and more than half of the flats have a saleable area of less than 30 square meters, with some even less than 20 square meters, making it difficult for them to attract PRH residents to purchase, so as to release their flats for those who are on the waiting list. In this connection, will the government inform this council, 1, under the sale of GFH flats 2022 of the number and percentage of flats of less than 20 square meters, and the sale rate of such flats as at the 30th of last month, under the sale of GSH flats 2023, for which applications will soon be invited, of the number and percentage of flats of less than 30 square meters, and among such flats, the number of those of less than 20 square meters. 2, as it has been reported that previous sales of GSH flats of less than 20 square meters have been sluggish, whether, in order to attract PRH residents to purchase their homes, the government will reduce the proportion of small-sized GSH flats, such as whether it will consider, where feasible, merging adjacent small flats which have been completed and are ready for sale, so as to increase the supply of flats over 30 square meters. And 3, as the Hong Kong Housing Authority indicated in 2021 that it was reviewing the mechanism and timing for converting PRH projects to GSH projects, with a view to facilitating in the long run the early identification of sites for GSH projects for formulating a flat mix more suitable for GSH buyers of the progress of the relevant review. Secretary for Housing. Mr. President, to further enhance the housing ladder and to provide better off public rental housing tenants with an additional opportunity to move up the housing ladder, the Hong Kong Housing Authority, or HA, launched the Green Form Subsidized Home Ownership Scheme, GSH, pilot in 2016 by selecting suitable PRH developments under construction for sale to Green Form applicants, or GF applicants. HA regularized GSH in 2018. In accordance with the pricing mechanism, GSH flats are sold at a discount of 10% more than that determined for the preceding home ownership scheme sale exercise. When HA regularized GSH in 2018, HA, after thorough discussions, considered it prudent to put up flats for sale at a more modest pace to reduce the risk of flats being unsold. In fact, before the launch of each GSH exercise, HA will take into account workflow, past experience, and the latest sales situation to consider the suitability of PRH sites for conversion as GSH projects, and the approval of the Strategic Planning Committee, or SPC, will be sought for each conversion. After obtaining approval from SPC, the GSH proposal, including the developments for sale and the sales arrangements, will be submitted to the Subsidized Housing Committee for approval at an appropriate time. Since the launch of GSH in 2016, HA had put up a total of about 13,900 GSH flats for sale. Only about 2,000 flats were of saleable area below 20 square meters, accounting for only about 15% of the total number of flats for sale. However, there are quite a number of smaller flats in Ching Fu Court and Dip Choi Court, accounting for 23% of the total number of flats in these two developments. Regarding the sale of GSH flats 2022, or GSH 2022 in short, HA has reduced the number of smaller flats. Out of some 4,700 flats in the 3 developments for sale under GSH 2022, there are only about 500 flats with sellable area below 20 square meters, accounting for about 10% of the total number of flats for sale. Although some smaller flats in Chingfu Court and Deep Choi Court were not sold in the previous GSH 2019 and GSX 2020-21 sale exercises, HA had offered these flats to eligible PRH applicants through Express Flat Allocation Scheme 2022. As for GSH 2022, flat selection commenced in the end of March 2023 and completed in mid-June. 98% of the flats under GSH 2022 were sold, with only about 100 unsold flats, the sellable area of which are below 20 square meters. The unsold GSH flats will generally be put up for sale in the subsequent GSH sales exercises. Past sales experience indicates that GSH flats of smaller size are less popular. HA has reviewed the current design process for conversion of PRH sites as GSH developments. On the one hand, we will allow flexibility in design so as to formulate a more suitable flat mix. On the other hand, we will attempt to select suitable GSH developments as early as practicable before the commencement of construction works. In this connection, HA has revisited potential GSH projects from 2021 and revised the flat mix if technically feasible, thereby reducing the number of smaller flats in the developments under GSH 2022 to about 10%. HA will follow the above approach in the future with a view to formulating a more suitable flat mix in a flexible manner. HA is currently finalizing the number of flats for sale and the flat mix for the next sale exercise, that is GSX 2023, and will announce the details at an appropriate time. As for GSX 2023 and subsequent sale exercises, the Chief Executive announced in the 2022 policy address that the sellable area of all subsidized sale flats or SFFs completed from 2026-2027 onwards will be no less than 26 square meters in general. HA will follow the strategy and direction of the policy address and set a minimum size for the newly built SSFs. Therefore, GSH 2022 is the last batch of developments with flats of sellable area below the 26 square meters. Thank you, Mr. President. Dr. Wendy Hong. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm happy to hear from the Secretary that GSX 2022 will be the last batch of developments with flats of sellable area below 26 square meters. At present, there is interchangeability between GSH and PRH, and there is also interchangeability between PRH and TPS. According to the Housing Authority, interchangeability is allowed to make way for more flexibility in terms of public housing. However, PRH is now comparable to subsidized sale flats in terms of quality, and this is criticized by the public. In fact, the HOS also rolled out the sale exercise last year with nano flats. On average, the smaller flats only had a size of 17.3 square meters. If the situation continues, GSH will not be able to fulfill the role as a rung on the housing ladder. Now, my question is, will the government change the concept of interchangeability of GSH and PRH flats so as to enhance the quality of subsidized sale flats? Secretary, thank you, Dr. Wendy Hong, for her questions. As I mentioned in my main reply, we just concluded the sale exercise GSH 2022, and this will be the last batch of developments with small flats. For GSH 2023 and onwards, according to the undertaking given in the 2022 policy address, for projects completed from 2026 to 27 onwards, the size of flats will not be smaller than 26 square meters. So despite having the phenomenon of nano flats, the policy address announced last year already called this to a halt. Now, for interchangeability, this is a concept we'll continue to embrace. As you know, we have 4 types of public housing. We have the different types from A to D, from the smallest being 14 square meters to D, 33 square meters, the largest type. Now, for type A, in our design, it's usually adjacent to, say, a type B flat. Now, if we want to change this project to a GSH flat, we will convert the A and D flats into 2 C-type flats, and then flexible design will be adopted so that the layout will be modified. In the future, the GSH will no longer provide flats with a sellable area of less than 26 square meters. We'll be able to fulfill this promise. Mr. Chan Hak-kan, in the Secretary's main reply, there are 100 GSH flats with sellable area below 20 square meters left unsold. My question for the Secretary is whether there are ways to sell them so that these 100 flats will not be left idle. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Chan. In previous exercises, some GSH flats, such as in Chingfu Court and Detroit Court, would be put up for sale in the next GSH sale exercise. So another batch would be sold. If there are still flats unsold, we had offered these flats to eligible PRH applicants through the Express Flat Allocation Scheme. So in the end, all the flats have been sold. In GSH 2022, some 100 GSH flats have not been sold, and they will be put up for sale in the GSH sale exercise 2023. So if the situation allows, these flats will be put up for sale again. In 2021, since the central allocation mechanism, until the review in 2022, the Planning Department already reviewed 256 vacant school premises. 40 of them are recommended to be converted for housing purposes in the long run. How many vacant school premises sites will be converted to provide subsidized sale flats, including GSH and also the public-private subsidized housing scheme? Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President. I do not have figures at hand. But in terms of vacant school premises, the government has been reviewing the situation at different levels. For example, whether the vacant school premises sites can be converted for housing in the long run. And that depends on the suitability of the sites, such as the geographical location, topography, and layout. The other method we can put it to good use is transitional housing. In the past, we had successful examples of converting school sites into transitional housing sites. This could be done expeditiously. Alterations can be carried out in just 6 to 9 months to provide transitional housing. And these projects are welcome by residents as they come with facilities such as ball courts. However, we're talking about just 120 and 130 flats available in a site. In future, we'll continue to review these sites, and if the parameters are found to be suitable, we will consider converting them into housing sites. Mr. Leung Kwong. Mr. President, it's been observed in previous GSH exercises there are problems. For example, smaller flats cannot meet the needs of PRH applicants. They are left unsold, but I'm happy to hear from the Secretary that the GSH 2022 will be the last batch of developments with nano flats. The government should review the positioning of GSH so that it remains a premium choice for PRH applicants to acquire their own homes. Now, in GSH 2022, the number of applicants with elderly will be eligible under the 1,400 quotas. Now, the 1,400 quotas have been used up. That means the bigger flats have all been sold with 2 rooms. As for nuclear families or singleton applicants, they are not given the opportunity to buy bigger flats, and they are the aggrieved as they often fail to get a quota under the balloting system for larger flats. My question is whether the Secretary will review the flat selection mechanism and the flat mix so as to consider the home ownership needs of different applicants with different household sizes and needs. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Mr. Leung. GSH's positioning is that we'd like to help PRH applicants purchase their own home at an affordable price so that the PRH flats they currently occupy can be released to allow better turnover. GSH is the first rung of the ladder, and then the applicant can move up to other forms of subsidized housing such as public-private partnership housing. Now you can take a mortgage from banks up to 95%. It's pitched at $750,000 per flat. So if you consider the down payment for a 95% mortgage for a $750,000 flat, this is a really good choice for these applicants to purchase their own home. Now, we've also heard views from the community that priority should be given to households with elderly people. We do encourage family members to live with their elderly. However, can the ratio be adjusted? Because meanwhile, we've also heard from the community calls for other or demands of other household sizes to be considered. We welcome views, and we will give it a thought in the next flat selection exercise. Dr. Hui Simon Lee. Thank you, Mr. President. In 2021, in her Housing Authority meeting, it already expressed that the interchangeability of GSH and PRH should be reviewed so that flat mix more suitable to GSH buyers can be provided. However, as of this year, in relation to the government's information on the 5-year PRH production plan, there is nothing on the GSH or sites dedicated to GSH. It seems that they are mixed in the same pot with the PRH sites. Now, Secretary, is it possible to provide separate information on sites dedicated to GSH? Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Dr. Lee. Now, there are many factors to consider when it comes to GSH sites. For example, for GSH projects to be completed from 2026 onwards, in fact, we are selling off planned flats starting from 3 years before, that is in 2023. Now, when we first make the announcement, we need to conduct internal studies 2 years in advance of the announcement. We'd like to make an announcement to the public as soon as possible. When it comes to site identification, there are many things to consider, such as the number of flats for selection and whether the site can meet the parameters. There are also community facilities to consider. We wouldn't want the site to provide excessive facilities for future management issues. For GSH, we want to have a standalone site for better property management in the future. So, of course, we understand the aspiration. We'll try to make announcements as early as possible. Mr. Adrian Ho. Thank you, Mr. President. In October 2021, when the government announced the updated 2030 plus planning and engineering studies, the government stipulates a target for per capita living space that is 215 square feet and 237 square feet. Now, the Secretary already mentioned the minimum size of subsidized sale flats in relation to the upcoming GSH sale exercise. Is the Secretary confident in taking the lead in building bigger flats so that private developers will follow suit and stop building nano flats so that overall the living quality of Hong Kong people can be improved? Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President. in the land lease, we've put in a condition for private developers to build flats not less than 26 square meters, and that is 280 square feet. This is also relevant to the future land supply or the supply of public housing. In the near future, we may not be able to instantly expand the size of PRH flats because the site comes with a size constraint. If we build bigger flats, it means we can only build a smaller number of flats. Once we guarantee an adequate supply of public housing, we will consider increasing the size of PRA or public housing flats. It seems that in the second 5-year period of the 10-year period, we should be able to achieve that. Ms. Judy CHAN. In 1999, when Housing Authority endorsed a new policy stipulating that the second generation of the household members of a public rental housing should vacate the flat once the principal householder passes away. However, there is also another policy for these tenants who are required to leave the PRH whilst not eligible or while cannot afford private housing, they can apply for HOS. I want to know whether the government will also make these people eligible for GSH so that they have the incentive to buy their own homes and release the PRH flats whilst selling the smaller GSH flats, which are more difficult to sell. Secretary, I note Ms. Judy CHAN's comment. I'll go back and give it a thought. That is in relation to the priority given to HOS applicants. I'll see if this applies to GSH as well.
Question to Honorable Judy CHAN. There are views that gory and violent footage of unfortunate incidents easily causes worries and anxieties among minors and creates a long-term impact on their mental health. In this connection, will the government inform this council, first, whether it has compiled statistics on the number of minors who are emotionally disturbed after being exposed to undesirable information involving violence and needed to seek professional assistance, including but not limited to the 24-hour hotline of the Social Welfare Department, the Shall We Talk Psychological Support Service of the Hong Kong Red Cross, and the Mental Health Direct Hotline of the Hospital Authority in each of the past 3 years? If so, of the details. If not, whether it intends to start compiling such statistics. Second, as there views that the impact of gory and violent footage is particularly serious on mental health of minors, where the government will consider stepping up publicity and education, as well as providing more emotional support services for the affected minors. If so, of the details. If not, the reasons. And third, whether it will instruct the district services and community care teams in short, to step up work on strengthening the mental health of minors and consider providing additional support for care teams, such as increasing the amount of funding or providing relevant training for the members and volunteers. Secretary for Health. President, Ms. CHAN and other members, the government attaches great importance to the mental health of the public. Mental health goes beyond medical care, and factors such as the economy, media, education, social welfare, etc. could also affect mental health. For the mental health of children and adolescents, the government adopts an integrated and multidisciplinary service approach, including education, prevention, early identification, as well as provision of timely intervention, treatment, and rehabilitation services for those in need, so as to enhance the overall mental health of minors. The occurrence of unfortunate incidents undoubtedly caused distress among some minors. However, when gory and violent video clips of such unfortunate incidents are shot, it is even worse, and they are widely distributed and disseminated and shared on the internet and in the media. The minors who are exposed to such clips have their mental health severely affected. This is regrettable. To avoid affecting the mental health of minors among the rest of the community, the government appeals to the public to stop sharing gory and violent video clips. We would like to urge the media to exercise self-discipline. They should stop sharing such violent video clips. We urge the public to stop sharing them, and they should take the initiative to care for the minors around them. Pay attention to their mental health needs after watching the video clips and encourage them to seek professional help as soon as possible if they experience emotional distress. In relation to the question raised by the Honorable Judy CHAN, in consultation with the Department of Health, DH, the Education Bureau, EDB, the Home and Youth Affairs Bureau, the Hospital Authority, HA, and the Labor and Welfare Bureau, I come up with this consolidated reply. First, in the past 3 years, the utilization of the HA's Child and Adolescent Psychiatric Service and the HA Mental Health Direct, as well as the SWD's Integrated Community Centers for Mental Wellness, ICCMWs, is set out in the annex. I'm not going to read it out in great details. Bureaus and departments do not keep statistics on the utilization of the Shall We Talk Psychological Support Service hotline of the Hong Kong Red Cross. The HA and the SWD do not maintain statistics on the age profile of people using their service and whether they seek help because of the undesirable information. The request for mental health services by minors often involves interacting complicated reasons. In addition to being troubled by undesirable information, it could also be due to multiple factors like academic pursuits, family, and interpersonal relationships. It is therefore difficult to simplify the complex reasons behind help seeking and maintain relevant statistics. Second, the circulation of video clips of unfortunate incidents on the internet and in the media did cause fear and anxiety among many members of the public, and is even more serious among the minors. Following the incidents, the government promptly provided immediate emotional support service to the public and urged the community to stop sharing the video clips and note the emotional conditions of persons around them. We have adopted the following measures. A. The HA and the SWD and other organizations operated hotlines for assistance. B. The SWD set up a mobile service counter near the scene of the incident and held emotional support sessions so as to distribute pamphlets to the public and explain ways of coping with emotional disturbances. Clinical psychologists also provided emotional counseling and referral to those in need. And C. The EDB appealed to schools to refer to the guidelines for aftermath intervention and psychological support in relation to a crisis and discuss with school guidance personnel and school-based educational psychologists on ways to provide psychological education to students at appropriate occasions. In addition, to prevent children and adolescents' mental health from long-term effects due to exposure to violent video clips, the government has also been providing support to them through other channels. The measures include A. On school support, the EDB assists schools in adopting the whole school approach to promote mental health of students and enhance support for students with mental health needs. For instance, the EDB is committed to providing gatekeeper training for teachers, parents, and students to enable their early identification of and support for students with mental health needs. The Health Bureau, in collaboration with the EDB, the HA, and the SWD, has also launched the Student Mental Health Support Scheme to provide support services for students with mental health needs. The student health service provided by the DH includes annual health assessment services that identify and monitor health issues, including mental health. B. On community support, the SWD provides mental health support to children and adolescents in need through the ICCMWs, Integrated Family Service Centers, and cyber youth support teams, etc. C. On psychiatric services, different professional medical teams under the HA's Child and Adolescent Psychiatric Service provide early identification, assessment, and treatment services for children and adolescents in need. They also provide appropriate treatment and follow-up service to children and adolescents in need, depending on the severity of their medical conditions. And D. On mental health promotion and education, the Advisory Committee on Mental Health Shall We Talk, Mental Health Promotion and Public Education Initiative, and the SWD's mobile vans for publicity service on mental wellness, etc., promote mental health information to children and adolescents, so as to develop their understanding towards mental health at a young age and encourage them to seek help and intervention in a timely manner if in need. Third, the government is progressively launching the district services and community care teams in short, in the 18 districts to mobilize community resources and carry out caring initiatives. For example, visiting persons in need and introducing the government's support services and other community resources. Residents requiring assistance will be referred to professional service providers for follow-up. The HHB will actively explore with the other bureaus the feasibility of utilizing the district network and service experience of care teams to further support individuals with mental health needs. The bureau is currently studying the specific arrangements. Thank you, President. Ms. Judy CHAN. Thank you, President. Thank you, Secretary. In the main reply, the Secretary has talked about the complexity of the issue, and therefore it will be difficult to simplify the collection of statistics. But then, to me, for the HHB as well as the LWB, since you have already been carrying out the gatekeeper training activities in schools, so why can't you conduct a questionnaire exercise in schools? Students and teachers have always been asked to fill out the questionnaires covering different areas. So in relation to the recent spate of unfortunate incidents, if we don't compile any statistics, how can we tell to what extent the minors are being affected by such undesirable video clips? Secretary. We do have a hotline, and we have adopted an integrated and multidisciplinary service approach to gauge the mental health needs of the callers. Therefore, for such counseling hotlines, we do not pinpoint a particular reason, say whether it is due to undesirable information on the internet. We are more concerned about the overall needs of the callers of such a hotline. Ms. Chan asked whether we will compile statistics in relation to a particular issue. We will consider that. Mr. Kenneth Leung, when such unfortunate incidents occur, according to the main reply, we don't want such video clips to be circulated extensively on the internet, affecting the mental health of the minors. My question is, for students, in relation to their media literacy, are you going to step up the education in this regard so that they would stop misusing the internet, and in this way they can avoid being affected by such undesirable video clips, and there won't be any campus bullying? Please switch your mobile phones to the silent mode. Secretary, I believe the Undersecretary for Education will take this question. Undersecretary. Thank you, President. Thank you, Secretary, for Health. Thank you, Mr. Leung, for your question. Well, in the aftermath of the unfortunate incidents, through social media, and through our website. The Education Bureau has provided useful information to parents and schools. We have also got useful resources and urged them to care for the emotional well-being of the students so as to help them to support students in relation to their mental health. As the Secretary for Health has said in his main reply, we should avoid sharing the relevant video clips again because they will cause distress among the viewers. Well, as to how we can help students make proper use of their computers and visit the internet, and how to avoid the traps on the internet and to avoid cyberbullying. Well, in fact, the Education Bureau has asked the Hong Kong Playground Association to do this for parents, teachers, and students. We have got hotline and internet assistance schemes. In particular, we want to deal with the following issue. When students come across undesirable information while visiting the internet, they may have an issue. Well, in fact, we have adopted the theme to have an activity for students and their parents, that is walk with you on the internet, so as to disseminate proper information on the use of the internet service. Ms. Lillian Kwok, frontline teachers have told me that we have the highest number of students committing suicide. It is a serious issue. Some researchers have told us that 74% of the students have never received any counseling service, but in the United States, 95%, that is almost all the students, have received professional counseling service. Well, on average, the EPs, the education psychologists, can only, on average, meet students in need once in 3 months' time. On the mainland, we have got on-site psychological help, and in Macau, again, professionals are being relied upon to help students with their emotional well-being. We have trained many counselors. They are highly educated, they are professional counselors. So in relation to counseling support, in relation to the mental health of minors, at the community level and at the school level, would you consider providing a proper support network? Do you have plans to make good use of the resources available? That is, we have such a good team of counselors. Are you going to send them to schools to provide support? If not, why not? Who will take this question? Under Secretary for Education. I would like to thank Ms. Kwok for her supplementary question. First of all, for schools. In secondary schools, 1 school, 2 social workers, primary schools, 1 school, 1 social worker. That's our current arrangement. And we've also got the whole school approach for counseling, so that we provide comprehensive counseling service to the students. As far as student counseling is concerned, and in particular, students with mental health needs, our support doesn't stop at individual teachers or individual social workers or other student counselors. We believe that the entire teaching staff, as well as allied health professionals, should be called upon to provide professional service in great depth. Now that we have got social workers for schools, in particular, they are there for primary schools as well. I think schools can flexibly use the funding from the government as well as other resources so as to provide the service to the students. They can get the service from professional organizations. In this way, we can step up the counseling given to students. Currently, for students with mental illness, will be regarded as a student with special educational needs. And in fact, schools will get a special grant so that there will be additional resources to render support to such students. Dr. Chow Min Kwong, it is said that care teams will be set up to help with the identification of minors with mental health needs. I think it's easy for schools to do that. But what about the question of shortage of manpower? We don't have sufficient professionals available, and it easily takes us a long time to wait for our turn to get help. So how are you going to make sure that perhaps you can make an arrangement so that those in need can turn to the private sector for help? Well, currently for the HA, they have got the child and adolescent psychiatric specialist outpatient clinic. They have a triage arrangement to make sure that urgent cases requiring early identification and treatment will be given up an early consultation session. Generally speaking, outpatient clinics will regard such as priority 1 cases. In other words, they are urgent cases. Currently, they only have to wait for a week's time. This way, we can make sure that within a reasonable period of time, they will get treatment. And for less urgent cases, like priority 2 cases, currently the waiting time is within 4 weeks. In the year 2022-23, such a target has already been reached. In other words, the HA can keep the median waiting time as set out for the priority 1 and priority 2 cases. Ms. Lam So Wai, for the mental health of the minors and adolescents, what about the non-Chinese speaking minors? 300 secondary school students of ethnic minority origins were interviewed. It is said that 70% of those interviewed are not aware of the type of help available. Almost 80% of them told us that they did not know how to seek help. Some Pakistani respondents said that they were not able to tell where to turn to. They have got cultural differences, and they have a different background, so they may be put off from seeking help. So do you have specific measures to make sure that EM students with mental health needs will know where to turn to for help? Secretary, I'd like to thank the member for her question. Mental health support and counseling for EM students. In the year 2022, our policy address has said that for the EMs, there will be a service center so that in the mother tongue, they will be given emotional support and counseling. For the hospital authority, we are currently actively liaising with NGOs so as to come up with this kind of emotional support and counseling center for the EMs. It is expected that this will be established within the year. Mr. Yim Kong. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. President. Recently, there was a movie with Zhao Yunfan being the main character. That's about a young person with autism. Please clip your mic on your lapel. Yes, we can hear you. President, recently we have got a movie being shown in the theaters. It's about caring for an autistic young person. The main character in the movie is Mr. Zhao Yunfan. Do you know the number of young people with autism? For those without the financial means, are you going to provide more support so that they can go to special summer camps in the school holidays? Secretary. Well, as far as autism is concerned, according to the HA, in the year 2022-23, as far as inpatient and outpatient cases are concerned, for those aged below 18 and have a mental health issue, for those with an autism sort of issue, we have 16,690. For those suffering from ADHD, 1,860, while others have other mental health issues. This is the current picture. Thank you.
Question 3, Honorable Chan Hak-kan. President, the government promulgated on the 16th of May this year the updated talent list, or the list, aiming to reflect the latest shortage situation of talents in various professions and to apply to the 3 talent admission schemes. However, when the panel on manpower of this council discussed the relevant subject at its meeting on the 20th of June, many members with professional backgrounds indicated that the government had not consulted the professional or industry organizations to which they belong on matters relating to the updating of the list. In this connection, the government informed this council one of the names of the organizations that the government consulted in updating the list. 2, as some members of this council have relayed that the professions and occupations set out in the updated list have failed to reflect the actual situation of the industries to which they belong. Whether a mechanism is currently in place to allow the professional and industry organizations that were not consulted when the list was updated to reflect their views and not update the contents of the list again in time. If that is, whether the government would take the initiative to seek the views of the relevant professions and industries. If that's not, how the government deals with the issue that the updated list may not reflect the actual situation. And 3, whether the government has, under the existing policy, strengthened the training work correspondingly for local talents whose professions and occupations have been included in the list. If so, of the specific implementation details. If not, the reasons for that. Secretary for Labour and Welfare. President, the purpose of drawing up the talent list by the government is to identify quality talents in need in Hong Kong that are in shortage and are difficult to nurture locally in a short time. The talent list is applied under the relevant talent admission schemes to enable the employers to recruit outside talents to meet their needs in support of Hong Kong's development into a high value-added and diversified economy. The talent list has been applied to the Quality Migrant Admission Scheme, QMAS, since its first promulgation in 2018. To proactively draw for outside talents, the 2022 policy address announced that the application of the talent list will be expanded to, and that the talent list will be updated as soon as possible to reflect the latest shortage situation in various professions. The application of talent list has been extended to General Employment Policy, GEP, and the Admission Scheme for Mainland Talents and Professionals, ASAMTP, since December 28th last year. After review, the government promulgated the updated talent list on May 16th this year with an expanded coverage from 13 to 51 professions. The expanded list helped us attract more high-quality talents, supporting the high-quality economic and social development of Hong Kong. In consultation with the relevant bureaus and departments, the consolidated reply to the question raised by Mr. Chan Hak-kan is as follows. 1. In order to gather suggestions from various industry stakeholders for updating the talent list, the Labour and Welfare Bureau and relevant bureaus and departments consulted stakeholders of industry organizations of various sectors, major business chambers, Human Resources Planning Commission, etc. Consultation were conducted in different forms, such as meetings, written submission, and interviews to collect views. Industry stakeholders welcomed the review of the talent list in face of severe manpower shortage in recent years. They hoped that the talent list will cover more professions to help them cope with the manpower shortage. Stakeholders from different sectors expressed views on the coverage of the talent list. The government duly considered their views and decided to substantially expand the talent list to cover 51 professions under 9 industrial segments. The organization consulted are listed in Annex. Applying the talent list to talent admission is just one of the initiatives to alleviate manpower shortage. In considering whether a profession should be included, the government is guided by the important principle that 1. Inclusion will support the development of Hong Kong's high value-added and diversified economy. 2. Talents of these relevant professions are not readily available locally. And 3. Talents of the selected profession cannot be nurtured through local training in good time. As a measure to provide immigration facilitation for incoming talents, the talent list must be clear, transparent, and stable for employers to fully understand the relevant procedures and operations so that it can function effectively. The government will review and update the talent list in a timely manner, and the relevant professions may still apply to come to Hong Kong through various admission schemes, even if their respective professions are not covered in the talent list. Relevant bureaus and departments maintain close relations with industrial stakeholders to understand their views on manpower demand. Professions with manpower shortage may be considered in the future review of the talent list. In addition, the government is conducting a new round of manpower projection, and the main findings are expected to be ready in the third quarter of 2024. The findings will be useful for the review of the talent list in future. 3. The primary objective of manpower policy is to nurture local talents complemented by admission of outside talents with a view to enriching the talent pool in Hong Kong and meet our social and economic development needs. For professions on the talent list, the required talents must have specific academic qualifications, professional training, and work experience, and are not readily available in the local employment market. Local training arrangements are generally available for these professions, but however, it takes time to train up local talents, and they may not be available within a reasonable time frame. Bureaus and departments have been providing local training for nurturing talents of their respective industries, including various types of internship programs and training courses, and the provision of subsidies and allowances to meet the manpower needs. If there is an increasing manpower demand arising from the continual development of relevant professions, relevant bureaus and departments will work for local institutions and training organizations to explore offering more training courses with a view to nurturing local talents. Mr. CHAN Hak-kan, of course, it's a good thing that we have this talent list so that we can have more outside talents. Mr. Edmund WONG has been saying that there's a shortage of accountants, but we don't see anything on accountants in the list. But there's the Chinese medical practitioners is on the list, although the practitioners don't think there's a shortage. So perhaps the views adopted by the government should not be at variance to such a great extent with the professions or industries in question. Secretary, thank you for your questions. In updating the talent, we expanded the number of professions from 15 to 51. We adopted the same approach in the updating process. First of all, the Labor and Welfare Bureau is the coordinating bureau, and we will also consult other bureaus and departments, and the bureaus and departments will consult relevant stakeholders of the respective industries and professions. At this time, the Labor and Welfare Bureau sent letter to the 5 major chambers of commerce, and we also consulted the Human Resources Planning Commission. So that's how we came up with the list of 51. But of course, the talent list is not a stagnant list. It will be updated regularly to reflect the manpower demand at the time. Mr. Martin Liu, will the talent list provide us with a focus so that we can attract talent to come to Hong Kong to support Hong Kong's high quality value-added in economic development? At present, the qualification is pitched at a bachelor's degree, and also experience will be required. But for new organizations, new industries such as 5G and the metaverse, such a criteria may not be the best to judge their eligibility. So my question is, will the government consult the relevant industries and relax these requirements? Thank you for your question, Mr. Liu. In drawing up the talent list, we do have some criteria to go by, including those mentioned by the member. First of all, the talent must have a bachelor degree or higher. This is the minimum. We don't think there's a need to change this requirement. But of course, for some new and upcoming industries, their practitioners may come from a more diversified source. For example, we have category A for the talent admissions, top talents. Well, if they are working in high-tech industries, they're earning a very high salary, $2.5 million. so they would be qualified under Category A of the Top Talent Admission Scheme. But that's a separate channel from the one offered by the talent list. Mr. Edmund Wong. Well, it's said that the relevant, the Hong Kong ICPA was consulted in updating the talent list. I've been asked by fellow accountants, and we are now in a very difficult position. And we'll hire anyone that come our way. So what's the problem? Since the Bureau has consulted the Hong Kong ICPA, we may not know the answer anytime soon. It's said in the reply that there are 3 criteria. First of all, whether the relevant professions will assist in our high value-added economy, and talent are not very available locally, and then whether it cannot be nurtured through local training in good time. So for my profession, for my constituents, at least they will meet 2 of the 3 criteria. So are you going to wait until we are entirely short of professional accountants before we act to do something? Undersecretary for the Treasury and the Financial Services. As we have been looking into the development of the accounting professions as well as the availability of accountants. We have maintained close liaison with the Hong Kong ICPA. For this instance, we did talk to the relevant committees and the Hong Kong ICPA at the time. We were given to understand that although the number of accountants are increasing all the time, but because of the prospect and other factors, some qualified accountants opt not to work as an auditor. Therefore, for some firms, they may have difficulties in recruiting auditors, especially the less experienced qualified auditors. Well, as the Secretary has said, the talent list is just one of the channels to alleviate manpower admission or talent admission. And this particular scheme is for the purpose of importing the professions with a medium and high professional experience. We have heard the views from the accounting professions, and we would continue to work with the trade organizations and professional organizations to review the latest situation with accountants. As the Secretary has said, that the talent list will be updated regularly. Mr. Paul Chair, according to the Secretary, well, there's a Category A under the top talent pass scheme. Well, this term of government acts very quickly, but sometimes without thinking through the problem. For the first 4 months, we have already approved 17,000 talents. For Category A, 2,652, 90% from the mainland. It doesn't matter. But we discovered a problem right from the very beginning. There is a Hon CHAN Hoi-yan, whose work on DNA coding and editing. So that at that point, there was no requirement to declare a criminal record. Well, we know that things are working very quickly, and in the mainland terms, this is a channel for these people to run away from the mainland. And they are not really interested in coming to work in Hong Kong as a talent. And the government also doesn't look into the categories of the professions for the particular industries. It seems that there's a loophole in that the requirements are not specified. So will the government compile the statistics on the talents that admitted to Hong Kong and what are they doing here? instead of doing some shadow boxing in the dark without targeting the right question. The talent list is not just about labor importation. The talent list is applied to our labor importation schemes such as the QMAS, and also there's a general employment policy and the admission scheme for mainland talents and professions. For general policy, employment policy and admission scheme for mainland of talents and professionals, they will only be admitted if they get jobs in Hong Kong first. So if they are covered by the talent list, they will be easier. They will facilitate immigration. But for the top talent pass scheme, it's a different scheme. It would not be limited to certain professions. But when it's time for renewal of their stay, they would have to prove that they are working in the relevant professions, or they are running a business which benefits Hong Kong. So we want to create a value addedness for Hong Kong through such practices. Professor Chan Wing-kong, I'm more in favor of attracting talent. But it seems that the government did not do a good job in consultation, particularly with the Chinese medicine practitioners. Well, the Chinese medical practitioners is now listed without full consultation. And this has been admitted by the government that the tertiary institutions, the trade associations and professional bodies were not consulted. So it's a good thing that you admit your fault. In 2022, the government cut 20% of subsidized university places for Chinese medicine courses. But on the other hand, you cover medical GMP in the talent list. That's a contradiction in your policies. Would you reverse the decision to cut the number of subsidized university places for CMPs so that we can nurture more local CMPs? Undersecretary for Health. Yes, we have had quite a lot of communication on this matter previously. On the question of the number of subsidized university places, I have some figures to inform members. For the triennium 2022 to 25, for first year UGC, first year places, we have 75 under the auspices of the UGC. But we can also allow universities, while not incurring additional expenses, to enroll more CMP trainees to their courses. So as a matter of fact, there will be 84 graduates for the triennium 22-25, which is more than what it was previously. As for whether it's a successful measure, there will be a review in due course. Apart from the undergraduate places, there are other training courses for CMPs. We have earmarked, actually in 2018, the policy address earmarked $20 billion for training. And then additionally, in 2022-2023, there will be another $10 billion for the some projects to train up more CMPs. That's a facilitation for training. Now maybe I can explain why CMP is on the talent list. We have to admit that in the last updating exercise, we did not see a severe shortage of CMPs. But at that time, we did not take into account some new developments, such as a new CMP hospitals, and also the inclusion of CMP in the primary healthcare system. The Chinese medicine hospital will be led by CMPs. It will be up and running in 2025. At that point, we need to have senior professional CMPs, and we exchange views with the mainland authorities, the relevant ministries and authorities wanted to support Hong Kong in this regard, especially post-qualification training and inpatient care. Therefore, we would need to have more talents in the professional development of CMPs, so that when the new hospital is commissioned, we will be able to refer to the talent list for admission of senior professionals. Mr. Tang Fei, again, my question is on CMP. For other professions, the relevant trade organizations or professional bodies will be consulted in the updating process, but that's not the case with the CMP, and the administration did admit that they did not do this. So why is it that the relevant professional bodies was not consulted before the talent list is updated to include CMPs? What's the policy consideration behind this? Undersecretary for Health, as I've said, we would do a manpower planning for the healthcare manpower every few years. And we did one in 2021, and in 2023 we are going to do another one. And one factor that were not covered in 2021, and that is the commissioning of a new Chinese medicine hospital, and therefore we need to take this into account. This year there will be another manpower planning. As I've explained, it's important to have both quality and quantity of manpower. We have to look at the manpower requirement, especially in the number of trainers who are experienced.
Question 4, Mr. Johnny Ng. Thank you, President. There are views pointing out that children living in subdivided units SDUs live in a poor and crowded environment. Their physical and mental health, study and social life are affected. In this connection, will the government inform this council, 1, of the number of SDU households in Hong Kong, with a breakdown by district, household size and household income, etc.? 2, of the number of SDU households in Hong Kong with children and the number of such children, with a breakdown by their age and district of residence, whether it has estimated if the number of children living in SDUs will increase or decrease in the coming 3 to 5 years. And 3, whether a mechanism is in place to give priority to SDU households with children in the allocation of public rental housing PRH flats, whether it will draw reference from the practice of according priority to applicants with elderly family members in flat allocation, and consider improving the criteria for approving applications for transitional housing and light public housing so as to give priority to SDU households with children aged 16 or below, as well as to set a goal that no children will live in SDUs within the coming 3 to 5 years, and a timetable and key performance indicators for the work. Secretary for Housing. President. The housing needs of those who are inadequately housed has all along been the concern of the government. The current term government has proposed measures including the construction of about 30,000 light public housing LPH units to provide more options for households on the waiting list for PRH for more than 3 years and are currently in subdivided units with a view to improving their living environment. After consulting with the Census and Statistics Department, CNSD, our reply to the question is as follows. CNSD collected information on the population living in SDUs and their socio-economic characteristics in the 2021 population census. According to the census result, there were about 107,000 households living in SDUs in 2021, with an average household size of 2 persons and a median monthly household income of about 15,000. The number of households living in SDUs by district council district, by household size, and by monthly household income are at Annex 1. There are about 34,000 children persons aged below 15 living in SDUs in about 25,900 households. The statistics by age group and by district council district are at Annex 2 and 3 respectively. Over the 5 years, from 2016 to 2021, the number of children living in SDUs reduced from 37,500 to 34,000. The proportion of children among persons living in SDUs, excluding foreign domestic helpers, also decreased from 18.1% to 15.9%. As the government gradually increases the supply of traditional public housing, coupled with the additional short-term supply from LPH and transitional housing, we believe that it will bring changes to the SDU market and help reduce the number of children living in SDUs. The Hong Kong Housing Authority HA's objective is to provide PRH to low-income families who cannot afford private rental accommodation. The HA handles eligible PRH applications under various categories according to the allocation policy. Given the limited PRH resources and the persistent high demand of PRH, the eligibility for these applications and priority of allocation for families with children are the same as ordinary families. As far as the current situation is concerned, if more priority schemes are set, the quota for each scheme with priority will be reduced. Therefore, we consider that the current arrangement has struck the balance among the different needs of applicants under different categories. We will keep an open mind and closely monitor the situation. For transitional housing, operating organizations should allocate not less than 80% of the units to persons who have waited for PRH for not less than 3 years, that is, Category A tenant. Organizations may formulate detailed criteria having regard to their service features and reserve not more than 20% of the units for other categories of applicants, that is, Category B tenants. For example, families who have waited for PRH for less than 3 years but with imminent housing needs. Operating organizations can apply to the Housing Bureau to adjust the tenant ratio according to the actual circumstances of projects. In selecting Category B tenants, operating organizations will consider a basket of factors. For example, whether the applicants have imminent housing needs, their current living environment, family situations, say whether there are elderly members, children, persons with disability in the family. As different projects and organizations are different, for example, the location and service target, we allow flexibility for each organization in the allocation of units to SDU households. The current practice has balanced the needs of various types of applicants while allowing organizations flexibility to adjust and make suitable arrangements according to the actual needs of each case. Taking the two large-scale projects, that is Yuen Long United Court and Pok Oi Kong Hawaii Village, as examples, as at June 2023, about 379 households which used to live in inadequate housing have children. Priority will be given to family applicants of LPH. Some in the community consider that some categories of applicants, for example children, should be accorded priority. We will keep an open mind and fully consider different views. We're now formulating the allocation principles of LPH in details to ensure that LPH could help those with the most imminent housing needs under an objective yardstick. As mentioned, as the construction of traditional housing and LPH complete in the coming years, more options will be available for households currently living in inadequate housing. Coupled with the increasing supply of traditional public housing, the number of SDUs of poor quality will decrease and the living environment of families and children will be improved. Thank you. Ms. Johnny Ng. Thank you, President. According to the reply, there are about 34,000 children living in SDU studies. 4.5% of Hong Kong population live in SDU studies. 1 out of 4 in a number of districts, mostly in Sham Shui Po and Yau Chin Wong. and we would like to expedite the allocation of PRH units to them. Currently, there are a number of family-friendly allocation schemes under the Housing Authority. Why is priority not given to families with children to solve their needs? Thank you. We noticed that there are a lot of SDUs in Sham Shui Po or Yau Chim Wong. Regarding LPH, traditional public housing, and transitional housing, of course, we would like to identify more sites in the urban area. But Hong Kong is well developed. It is not easy to identify sites in urban areas for LPH or transitional housing. We found land for transitional housing from government land and from private developers. We are thankful for that. For private lands, they're loaned by private developers. Most of these sites are in the new territories. That's why 62% of transitional housing is in the new territories. For LPH, we would like to address this imbalance. That's why there are only 10% of the units in the new territories. About 40% of them in Tuen Mun, and about 50% of them are in urban areas. So we would like to build more such units in areas with a lot of SDUs. Yes, we're concerned about children issues. When I visited SDU households, I saw a tiny room in these families for children. And children playing, they might bump into something all the time and they would get agitated, and parents might not feel too happy about it. We're talking about families who've been devoting their efforts and time for our society, and when they grow old, they have no choice but to live in SDUs. We're sad about that. We need to strike a balance. We're happy to listen to views. We would like to make the most reasonable allocation between children and people with disabilities. Ms. Jovi Chan, Mr. Xia Baolong talked about addressing the problem of SDUs. This year in the Children's Day, the FTU issued a study report on children. We've given one to the Bureau. I've been serving Sham Shui Po, Tsuen Wan, and Kwai Ching. I have been in contact with a lot of children living in SDUs, and they all shared with me that they would like to have their own desk so that they don't have to crouch over their bunk bed to do their homework. Well, I provided free tuition classes when I was a district councillor. The point is to provide a desk and space for them to continue with their studies. If you live in SDUs, and it will affect your development, and then it will affect your upward mobility. Currently, 34,000 children are living in SDUs according to the government. Will you take on board our views and do something about households with children living in SDU so that they can, within 3 years, be allocated a flat in LPH so that they can say goodbye to SDUs? Secretary. I thank Ms. Chan for the question. Ms. Chan and I have visited households in SDUs as well as the sample units of light public housing. I fully understand how Ms. Chan feels. We saw children 3 or 4 years old, and if they have to be cooped up in an SDU unit during this golden development years, the development will be seriously affected because of the condition they live in. So the government will build LPH as soon as possible. I describe these initiatives as a lifeboat. That is exactly the reason. We have plans to take them out of such appalling living condition. We care about children a lot. We, too, are concerned about elderly people living in SDU. We need to strike a balance. Yes, the FTU advocates priority given to children. When we consider the needs of children and those of elderly people, we try to strike a balance so that we can help those who are in most need and those who are in need of our help. Reverend Kun, President, I'm sure that we all know about the appalling conditions in SDUs. In hot days, even if it's an adult, they find it difficult to breathe. And for children, it will be very difficult for them to concentrate on their studies. Previously, the government indicated that they would launch in the new school year a new pilot scheme for after-school care scheme. About 3,000 children will benefit. Will the administration consider increasing the number of places in this pilot scheme and give priority to children living in SDUs? Secretary. Thank you, President, and I thank Reverend Kun for his question. For this after-school care program is under the purview of the Education Bureau. I don't have any details with me. I will liaise with the Education Bureau after the meeting to get some information. Let me stress again that if SDU households decide to take up the allocation of LPHIC, that children have gone through some significant improvement in their, say, attitude and their academic performance. Well, people may worry about transportation issues and adjustments, but I've heard from a lot of cases that you may have to travel longer living in an LPH, but you will live in a better environment. And well, that's the same for transitional housing, because you're fully supported with welfare services, including study rooms. I've heard cases that children would help one another with their dictation because they turn it into something fun. So I do encourage households living in appalling SDUs to take up and to consider transitional housing and LPH. Mr. Vincent Chang, I'm sure that the current term government is working very hard to address the problem of SDU. This is an urgent issue. According to previous surveys, well, some SDU households do not apply for PRH, so giving them priority and allocation may not solve their problem. I think it's more important to regulate inadequate housing, especially SDUs with illegal structures, substandard conditions, or those in industrial buildings, and well, they should be phased out. And for the others, you can regulate them through a licensing system. So with the completion of LPH and transitional housing, will the government then do something to phase out inadequate SDUs? Will they formulate a plan and take concrete action? Secretary. In areas with a proliferation of SDUs, say in Sham Shui Po, departments will enhance their attention on the living conditions of these units. Say, for example, the buildings department, they take law enforcement actions taking into account the different aspects of these units. Say, for example, ventilation, light penetration. For light public housing, transitional housing, and an increase in traditional public housing, we will have more room to find ways to regulate units in appalling conditions and to find ways to phase out these poor living these units with poor living condition. Mr. Ma Fong Kok, President. Well, to help junior secondary school students to broaden their horizons and explore more opportunities. Previously, there was this Strive and Rise scheme. Under the scheme, grassroots students from P1 to P3 will be covered. The aim of this scheme to help children in poverty, but the target group is only P1 from secondary 1 to secondary 3 students. Some people think that if you do something about it, it will be best done before a child reaches the age of 5, because that is the golden period of development. So will the government consider lowering the age threshold of the Strive and Rise scheme to kindergarten students or primary school students to help them? Mr. Ma, I think the question itself is about housing. It's not for the Secretary here to answer, but anyway, Secretary for Housing, do you have anything to add? Well, for the Strive and Rise scheme is under another bureau. In relation to my bureau for LPH as well as transitional housing, operators are required to provide social services to help children and elderly people, say playrooms, study rooms, and there will be matching done. There are social workers helping children with their studies. There are areas for children to play. And there is a book corner. And these initiatives are there to help children of a tender age and to alleviate parents of the pressure in taking care of the children. And I heard from the Labor Welfare Bureau that there is a concept about a community living room. I think it is about finding existing space to provide supporting service in a crowded area. Let me remind members that you need to turn your phone into silent. Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you, President. I believe that transitional housing and LPH can help households in SDUs in the improvement of their living condition. But regarding the family structure of SDU households, well, according to surveys done once every several years, the information you have is not enough, because very often when an SDU household when a household moves out, another moves in. Is there a scheme in the government to monitor the situation of SDUs? When households move out of SDUs to transitional housing or LPH, will another household in the grassroots sector move into that very same SDU? Secretary. Thank you, President. Mr. Lam is right. In the last survey done, we engage an NGO called Policy 21. In 2021, they were asked to conduct a survey. The situation changes rapidly. We need to think of ways to collect information. We have taken the initiative to send out questionnaires. We send them to applicants who've been waiting for PRH for more than 3 years to gather information about where they are currently living and the structure of their families. I believe that the information collected will provide a very good basis for our understanding of SDU households in future plans. Thank you.
Question 5, Ms. Rebecca Chan. Thank you, President. The government launched the electronic health record sharing system, known in abbreviated form as the e-health, in 2016 for participation by members of the public and healthcare service providers. Their views that as the coverage of e-health among healthcare service providers is still inadequate, and it is not interoperable with mainland medical institutions. These have limited the capacity of the government to achieve its objective of, among others, alleviating the pressure on the services of the public healthcare system by strengthening public-private partnership, promoting primary healthcare development, and supporting Hong Kong people to retire in the mainland cities of the GBA. In this connection, will the government inform this council, 1, of the respective numbers of young children, adults, and elderly persons who completed their registration for participation in e-health in each of the past 5 years, as well as their respective percentages in the population of the relevant groups? 2. Whether it has compiled statistics on the current number of private healthcare organizations in the territory and, among them, the number of those which have registered as healthcare service providers of e-health, of the efforts made by the authorities in the past 5 years to promote the participation of more private healthcare organizations in e-health. And 3. As the authorities have indicated that they will actively consider the further implementation of cross-boundary use of electronic medical records, whether the authorities have assessed the difficulties that they will encounter in implementing the relevant work, and whether they have drawn up a timetable for implementing the work. If so, of the details ignores the reasons for that. Secretary for Health. President launched. I thank Ms. Rebecca Chan for raising this question on the interoperability of e-health. This is an important topic. Electronic health record sharing system will guarantee the quality of our medical healthcare system and patients' health. E-health was launched in 2016. It is a territory-wide electronic sharing platform that connects various healthcare providers or HCPs in Hong Kong. HCP may upload and view the electronic health records of a citizen with his or her consent. The e-health has helped strengthen the public-private collaboration for the provision of continuing care for patients and improvements of the efficiency and quality of healthcare services. We have been improving and enriching the functionalities of the e-health, including introducing a mobile application, that is, e-health app, for members of the public to manage their own health condition, such as viewing medical appointments and uploading of vaccination records. We have also extended the contents of e-health to Chinese medicine records as well as scans. The government strives to gradually upgrade the role of e-health from a record-sharing system to a comprehensive healthcare information infrastructure that integrates medical records, health data, and medical service management with a view to building one digital health record for every citizen. The e-health will also serve as an important tool to implement major government healthcare initiatives, especially measures related to the primary healthcare blueprint. In terms of facilitating cross-boundary healthcare services, our objective is to enable interconnectivity and sharing of major medical data within the GBA in an orderly manner. Now, my reply to the various parts of the question raised by Ms. Rebecca Chan is as follows. The government has all along endeavored to encourage the participation of the public and HCPs in the e-health through various channels. The number of citizens registered with e-health increased substantially from around 0.9 million in 2018 to over 5.7 million in 2022, accounting for about 80% of the population in Hong Kong. Meanwhile, the number of downloads of the e-health app has reached 3 million. Among the registrants, those aged between 15 and 64 and 65 or above constituted more than 80% of the population of the two groups. However, those aged 14 or below only made up about 30% of the population of that age group. These are citizens without an identity card. The relevant figures are detailed in the annex. To boost the participating rate, we will continue to arrange mobile outreach teams to visit the maternal and child health centers of the Department of Health to assist parents to register the newborns under the e-health. The electronic registration of eHealth has also been incorporated into the business process of all MCHCs. Regarding HCPs, all public hospitals and clinics under the HA have joined and uploaded medical records to the eHealth. The clinics and service locations of the Departments of Health have also participated and gradually updated their eHealth systems for uploading medical records to the eHealth. As far as the private healthcare sector is concerned, as at the end of June this year, 13 local private hospitals and over 2,800 other private healthcare institutions are registered HCPs of the eHealth, covering some 4,700 service locations. A total of 12,750 doctors and dentists and about 40,000 other healthcare professionals are also registered as healthcare professionals with access to the eHealth. Over the past 5 years, we have rolled out a series of measures to encourage private healthcare institutions to use the eHealth and upload medical records to the system. They include expansion of shareable data scope of the eHealth to include radiological images and Chinese medicine information, developing modules for connecting with the eHealth, and requiring healthcare institutions participating in public-private partnership programs of the HA and the District Health Center Network to upload eHealth records to the eHealth. We have also provided the latest updates about the eHealth via briefing sessions, promotional videos, and regular newsletters to encourage patients and healthcare providers to enroll on the eHealth. At present, over 3 billion medical records have been shared on the eHealth. In the past 3 months, the monthly average electronic health record viewed and monthly eHealth app login frequency have reached over 160,000 and 600,000 respectively. However, as most of the medical records came from public healthcare institutions, the vision and potential of the eHealth in connecting the electronic health record of the public and private sectors have not been fully realized. In the next phase of the eHealth development, we will work to improve the uploading of medical records by private healthcare institutions and making use of the eHealth app to encourage better health management by members of the public. We will launch beta projects with private healthcare institutions and health information technology solution partners to foster technical exchange and collaboration and to garner more practical experience, so as to lay a solid foundation in the technical aspects for data sharing and enhancing further integration between private healthcare IT systems and eHealth. In addition, we will require the use of eHealth and the uploading of essential health and service data by all HCPs participating in the government's financed or subsidized health programs, so as to facilitate better coordination and continuity of healthcare services. We will also explore the feasibility of mandating the upload of important medical records through legislative means, so as to allow key health data be shared among HCPs, thus reducing duplicated medical examinations and medication errors. On question 3, cross-border application of e-health records. Given the sensitive nature of health data, we must ensure that patients' rights, data privacy, and security are fully safeguarded, and that the access and usage of the data are effectively monitored. We should duly consider the compatibility of the system's safeguards on privacy, data security, and laws and regulations between Hong Kong and the mainland, with a view to unleashing the potential of cross-boundary data use in a step-by-step manner. At present, members of the public may apply for the e-health records in electronic or paper form for sharing with non-local HCPs. We have made special arrangements during the COVID-19 epidemic, enabling participants of the pilot scheme for supporting patients of the HA in the GBA to authorize the University of Hong Kong Shenzhen Hospital to collect and use copies of the e-health data, thereby facilitating the provision of healthcare services by healthcare professionals in both places. In view of the positive feedback received from members of the public, we will continue to expand and deepen our work on this front. This year, we will further enhance the e-health system by enabling users to make one-stop applications for the e-health records through the e-health app. We are also looking into ways to allow citizens to upload their non-local health records onto the e-health for local healthcare professionals' reference. In other words, for medical checkups performed outside Hong Kong, the records will still be able to be uploaded into our system. This will improve the data connectivity between places. In light of the related developments, we will also review the need of amending the Electronic Health Record Sharing System Ordinance (CAP 625) so as to offer an appropriate legislative framework for cross-boundary transfer and use of medical records in order to facilitate the flow of health data between Hong Kong and the mainland. Thank you, President. Ms. Rebecca Chan. President, the Secretary mentioned that the Health Bureau would further deepen the interoperability of e-health in the GBA. This is something that we are calling for. Now, concerning the difficulties mentioned by the government, I fully understand that in the mainland, healthcare providers do not have a standardized health record sharing system, but this is not insurmountable. Now, for qualified hospitals in the GBA, we can invite them to join the e-health system in Hong Kong. It is just like inviting private medical institutions to join the service provision in Hong Kong. Now, I wonder what the timetable will be. How many hospitals in the GBA can we invite to join the e-health within this term of the government? How many more medical institutions in the mainland will be invited to join e-health? Secretary. Now, there are two questions. First, the applicability of our healthcare vouchers in hospitals in the mainland. Now, we have a timetable to extend the application of healthcare vouchers in the mainland on sharing of medical records. We have to ensure that there is a due way sharing of medical records between Hong Kong and the mainland. Now, we have entered into a memorandum of understanding with the MOU and the CAC. We will actively participate in the promotion of the sharing of e-health record across the border and extend the usage of the healthcare record in various aspects. Now, Mr. Edmund Wong, Professor William Wong, my questions have been answered. Mr. Edward Leung, concerning the cross-boundary sharing of electronic health record, the DAB supports it. Now, in terms of the name of drugs and also the languages used in writing medical records, they are different. Now, some people told us that when they present their medical records in the mainland to Hong Kong doctors would not accept it. Now, for orthopedics patients as well as other patients, the medical records are not accepted. So how can we fine-tune the system to ensure that medical records in various languages can be accepted? Secretary, now under the one country, two systems, in Hong Kong, we adopt English as a media of teaching for doctors as well as name of drugs. Now, in Hong Kong, most doctors can speak 2 languages or even 3 languages. Now, in our training for doctors, we have also trained doctors on the Chinese names of drugs. Now, with more collaboration with other GBA cities, we have to ensure that there is not just mutual sharing of medical records, but also mutual recognition of medical records. In other words, we have to ensure that there is mutual recognition for tests performed as the other place. Thank you. Mr. Duncan Chiu. Thank you, President. I declare that I'm a member of the HA board as well as the chairman of the Committee on I&T of the HA. Now, over the past few years, I was involved in the building of the HA Go and the e-health system. Now, I thank Ms. Rebecca Chan for her efforts. The system has been enhanced significantly. Now, this has become a platform for promoting the general health of the public in Hong Kong. So the HA has done a lot in terms of improving both platforms. The functionalities have been expanded much as well. Now, since last year, I have been saying that we have to promote primary health care for citizens through e-health. To do that, we have to collect health data from every citizen in Hong Kong. Now, this is being done in the public sector. However, in the private sector, only a small proportion of doctors are uploading patients' information onto the platform. Now, we are requiring HCPs in the public and private partnership to upload medical records. So this is good. We are doing a lot of things to encourage sharing of medical records, but the most important tool should be legislative amendments. Secretary, do we have a timetable on this? We have done a lot to encourage the private sector to upload medical data to e-health. Now, if in 2 years' time we still don't have comprehensive sharing of medical record, it would affect further progress. So would you consider legislative amendments by that point? Secretary, we would give priority to incentivizing the private sector to make use of the e-health system. We would encourage service providers and medical institutions to join e-health and upload patients' records. Now, for medical institutions subvented by the government, we will require them to join e-health, especially under the primary health care blueprint. We have the One Family, One Doctor scheme, as well as the chronic patients co-treatment scheme. We are requiring all participants, including doctors and medical institutions, to join e-health. Now, after reviewing the efficacy of the programs, we will decide whether we need legislative amendments to mandate sharing of medical records. Dr. David Lam, thank you. I have joined e-health at the pilot stage. I was one of the first doctors to join e-health, and this is very useful. Now, information and data are 2 different concepts. There are lots of data as well as information on e-health. However, in the public and private sectors, the major challenge is that it is very difficult for us to identify the important information in the short duration of consultation. So, can we make use of AI to identify keywords to help doctors? Otherwise, it is impossible for us to glean through all the information in such a short span of time. Secretary, thank you, Dr. David Lam. This is a very important suggestion. That is, we have to adopt technology to enhance our utilization of data. Now, the present e-health system is not perfect. There is no perfect electronic health record system in the world, but e-health is unique in that it is a single platform of electronic sharing system. Originally, there were only 43 participants. Now it has expanded to some 13 public hospitals and some 2,800 HCPs. This is of a scale unseen in other places. Now, in the mainland, each hospital has its own medical record storage, and these systems are not connected. Now, we will continue to enhance our system. Technology is definitely crucial in improving the e-health so as to turn the data into useful information.
Last question seeking oral reply, Mr. Edmund Wong. Thank you, President. I want to make a declaration. I do take a voluntary work at one of those subvented organizations. The government announced in 2015 the adoption of a package of proposals to extend the service of civil servants, including raising the retirement age of newly appointed civil servants in civilian grade to 65 starting from the 1st of June 2015, and introducing the post-retirement service contract scheme starting from November 2015. As for the relevant arrangements for subvented organizations, will the government inform this council, first, whether it has promoted the launch of measures by subvented organizations to raise the retirement age of new recruits to 65? If so, whether it knows the state of subvented organizations' implementation of such measures, if it has not, of the reasons for that, and whether it has found any staff succession problems in such organizations. Second, as the chief executive announced in the 2017 policy address that serving civil servants in civilian grades who joined the government between the 1st of June 2000 and the 31st of May 2015 would be allowed to choose to retire at the age of 65, whether the government has promoted the launch of the same measure by subvented organizations. If so, whether it knows the number of staff who joined such organizations during this period and chose to retire at 65 in each of the past 3 years. If it has not, of the reasons for that. And third, whether it has promoted the launch of post-retirement service contract schemes by subvented organizations. If so, whether it knows the number of staff employed through these schemes in each of the past 3 years. If it has not, of the reasons for that. Secretary for Labor and Welfare. President, there is currently no statutory retirement age in Hong Kong. The government of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region and some large private firms have set out the retirement age in the employment contracts, which are administrative or contractual arrangements. Having coordinated the input from the Civil Service Bureau, the Education Bureau, and the Health Bureau, I give the reply to the question raised by the member on behalf of the government as follows. To meet the demographic challenges arising from an aging population and a shrinking workforce, while allowing greater flexibility for bureaus and departments to have the necessary manpower, the government has implemented a package of measures to extend the service of civil servants. The government has raised the retirement age of new recruits to join the government on or after the 1st of June 2015 to 65 for civilian grades and 60 regardless of ranks for disciplined services grade. The government also launched in June 2018 the option for serving civil servants who joined the government between the 1st of June the year 2000 and the 31st of May 2015 to choose to retire at the age of 65. That's for civilian grade, or 60. That's for the disciplined services grade regardless of ranks. In addition, bureaus and departments may, taking into account factors such as their overall manpower situation, operational needs, and succession arrangement, flexibly take various measures for extending the service of civil servants, including the post-retirement service contract scheme, final extension of service, and the adjusted further employment mechanism to retain experienced civil servants reaching their retirement age to meet the manpower need and operational needs. For the private market, the Labor Department has been promoting among employers through diversified publicity events the adoption of employee-oriented good human resources management and elderly-friendly employment practices, such as extending the working age of employees for senior workers to keep working if they are willing to. Subvented organizations are the employers of their respective staff members. They devise their own human resources policies and management measures, including the terms of employment and retirement policies, taking into account factors such as resources, overall manpower, and actual and operational needs. In response to the manpower development needs of their respective sectors or subvented organizations, bureaus and departments may consider whether to encourage subvented organizations under their purview to adjust their retirement policies where appropriate. I will now outline the general practice of subvented organizations under the three areas which account for the largest portions of government expenditure, namely social welfare, education, and medical services as examples. On social welfare, the Social Welfare Department provides subventions and subsidies to non-governmental organizations for running welfare services and enters into agreements with these NGOs. Subject to their compliance with the service agreements and the relevant statutory requirements, NGOs may hire suitable staff to provide relevant services based on their actual operational needs and human resources policies. The SWD does not set the retirement age, qualifications, and conditions for appointment of the employees of these service operators and does not collect such information or data. On education, the EDB has always been closely monitoring the staffing of teachers in public sector schools with timely and appropriate measures taken to ensure the quality of education and smooth running of schools. Among them, the teachers and principals within the staffing establishment of government schools are civil servants. Therefore, the retirement age of teachers and principals who joined on or after the 1st of June 2015 has been raised to 65. As for teachers in aided schools, the EDB has reviewed the relevant policies and regulations on their retirement age. This includes considering the extension of the retirement age for newly joined teachers in aided schools from 60 to 65. Since the demand for teachers involves many uncertainties such as changes in the school-aged population and socioeconomic development, the EDB needs to consider the long-term teacher manpower needs involved in the relevant policies and latest social conditions in balancing multiple factors. The operation of schools is smooth in general, and schools have enough qualified teachers to take up the teaching duties. Aided schools may submit an application to the EDB for extension of the service of teachers and principals beyond the retirement age under the existing mechanism. If an incumbent teacher or principal is about to retire, but the school cannot find a replacement after making every reasonable effort, with a shrinking school-age population, the demand for teachers is expected to fall accordingly. The EDB will keep monitoring the situation and review it when necessary in light of the actual situation. On medical services, the hospital authority devises suitable human resources policies based on its actual needs. In the light of the aging population and shrinking labor force, and in view of the government's employment policy, the HA has raised the retirement age to 65 for new recruits starting work on or after the 1st of June 2015 to meet long-term staffing need. For workers who joined, there are civil servants who joined before the 1st of June 2015, the HA has in place a policy of extending employment beyond retirement to rehire suitable retired or retiring staff for easing the HA's manpower shortage and succession gaps. The policy includes early engagement of retiring staff to ascertain their commitment of extending employment after retirement through suitable screening. This policy also comes with flexibility for retirees to choose the timing and duration of further employment up to the age of 65. Retirees may also consider various employment options, such as part-time work or locum employment based on their own plans. Under the relevant agreements with the Health Bureau and legislation, the Prince Philip Dental Hospital is responsible for providing facilities for training dentists and other persons in professions supplementary to dentistry. The PPDH may devise its human resources policy based on its operational needs. The retirement age is 65 for staff employed on or after the 1st of July 2015, while that for staff who joined before this date is 65 without an option for extending the retirement age of 65. Thank you, President. Mr. Edmund Wong. President, I raised this oral question because I was told that for these subvented organizations, the retirement age is 60. For these reasons, these workers don't get their contracts renewed. Now, let me come back to the main reply. Departments and bureaus look at their own needs and then encourage the subvented organizations under their purview to adjust the retirement policies. For some subvented organizations, they are left to their own devices. The Policy Bureau does not tell them whether to adjust their retirement policies. We now have a dire staffing shortage. So these subvented organizations are helpless. So now my question for the government is, we talk about one government these days. Will there be a standard practice for all subvented organizations to review their retirement policies? Raise the retirement age to 65 across the board, that's one option. Or we can follow the private market by doing away with their retirement age. That way, different organizations can adjust their policies in light of their own circumstances. Secretary. Thank you. In my main reply, I mentioned this. For different subvented organizations, there are various funding or subvention mechanisms. The practice varies. So it's up to different policy bureaus, and the practice, the arrangement varies from organization to organization. There are different arrangements depending on the situation of each organization. This applies to the retirement age too. A subvented organization can set their own retirement age as part of the administrative practices. So it may not be a good idea for the government to set a uniform retirement age and apply it to all subvented organizations. We can stick to the current practice, so each bureau or each department can talk to their subvented organizations and come up with a suitable arrangement. Mr. Lam Chen Singh. Thank you, President. The government's reply has mentioned the extension of retirement age at places like the hospital authority. So there's the post-retirement re-employment scheme open to applications from their own staff. I looked at the data. For the hospital authority, when you look at the supporting staff grade, we're seeing a rise in post-retirement service contracts. There are workers beyond the age of 60. They may have other family commitments. So full-time work is not appealing to them. So will the government encourage these bodies to offer part-time options for retirees? That way, you can get more senior workers to keep working. Secretary. President. The employers get autonomy and flexibility in the mode of employment they offer. Now, take the hospital authority as an example. When you have a retired worker and they opt for post-retirement service, the worker can consider their own circumstances and choose from a range of options. So there will be part-time work, locum employment options. Mr. Holden Chow. President. The main reply covers different subvented organizations, the hospital authority, and there's a dental hospital. There are different retirement arrangements. The government told us each subvented body makes a decision based on their own conditions. I get that. But I want to ride on this point. We know there are part-time options to give workers more flexibility. Are there extra incentives for these retired workers to come back to work? We're talking about workers who have hit their retirement age. They may have their own plans. Will there be extra incentives or flexibility for these workers to come back to the workforce? In the medical services, we do have a staff shortage. Secretary. Now, this is about the service agreements between the subvented organizations and the government. Let's look at social welfare organizations. The organizations have a great degree of autonomy. They can look at their own needs and decide on the post-retirement service agreement. So they have much autonomy in that regard. Mr. Dennis Leung. Thank you, President. I want to make a declaration. I sit on the committee on the Provident Fund for aided schools. Now, for aided schools, there's currently no plan to raise the retirement age of these teachers from 60 to 65. This point was discussed in the past. For these schools, their provident fund goes like this. They serve for 10 years, the government makes a 10% contribution. For 15 years of service, 15% contribution. So when you make changes to these years of service, the teachers want to see the government adjust its contributions accordingly. So on the point of extending the retirement age, how would the government talk to the teachers such that these subvented organizations can enjoy the same retirement age as the government workers, that is at the age of 65? Thank you. As we can see in the main reply, the EDB has been keeping an eye on the staffing of teachers at public schools. We want to ensure the quality of education and that schools are run smoothly. Schools are generally run smoothly. We see enough qualified teachers at schools. There will be a structural decline in school-age population. There will be a drop in the demand for teachers accordingly. So at this point, the Education Bureau does not have a plan to extend the retirement age of teachers at subvented schools. We will look at the situation. When needed, we will review the situation. Well, this is about the demand for teachers. So the CSPF is not part of the consideration, as mentioned by Mr. Dennis Leung.
Government bills. First reading. Regional Flag and Regional Emblem Amendment Bill 2023.